we are moving to the final part of the conference. I have the great pleasure of welcoming Magali Anderson to the stage. She's a former Chief Sustainability Innovation Officer at Holcim. Her face, I'm sure, is very familiar to many of you. She's been a very vocal speaker when it comes to sustainability, not just speaker, but doer when it comes to sustainability and also gender issue. Thank you so much, Magali, for joining us. And given the short time frame and the fact we've been online for a couple of hours, if you allow, I want to share now with you as well the results and the rest of the audience, the results of the poll that we just did before we were breaking into these sessions. Let me see if I'm able to do so. Can the team help me in that respect? Somehow I don't see. No, yes. Is it on the screen for everyone?
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful. So we asked Magali, we asked to the audience before breaking into the two different sessions, where was innovation? Where is innovation most needed? And that's the result we get. I'm not surprised, I have to say, to see policy and regulation. I am surprised to see, or maybe disappointed to see procurement so low. The second one is infrastructure planning and design. It makes sense. I'm a bit disappointed on the gender results. And yes, there's also a clear call for transport sector coordination. Magali, if I lost you on the screen, and maybe I'll find you back. But Magali, I would love to start asking you to comment the results and say as well, where, according to you and your amazing experience, where is innovation most needed? Is it with the policy and regulation? Is it in the way we procure and we buy things? What is it exactly that we are missing, that innovation?
Thank you, Susanna, and good afternoon, maybe good morning for some people. Very happy to be here. I love IRF, as you know, so really happy to be back with you today. It's tough, because I don't know if 38 means 38 votes and you only had one vote each, which makes it very difficult because you have to choose. So I will not be as negative as you are. Maybe I'm an optimistic person. Maybe some of those topics were just coming second, but you only had one vote. So let's be optimistic. But it's true that I tend to agree with you that, of course, policy regulation is super important. Of course, infrastructure planning is very important. But really, procurement, and I'm not sure I would have voted for it, but definitely it should be on the top there, because if you think of procurement, it's such an incredible tool to change things almost immediately. I mean, think about it. When it comes to infrastructure, what is it? About 2/3 of the infrastructure is public money, roughly, give and take, just for this argument's sake. Well, so which means that it goes through a public procurement process, which depending on the country can be more complex, but it's basically means also it's quite easy to change. You just need to decide one day that it's a public procurement process, instead of just going for price-related type of criteria, we should have CO2 type of criteria, and bang, immediately that's it, 70% or whatever of what is spent on infrastructure suddenly becomes more sustainable. And it's really something like in France, for the construction of buildings, they have something called RE 2020, which put this type of constraint. And what it actually does is that it creates a level playing field for everybody. So the people who will need to spend a bit more money to offer a lower carbon solutions, and I'm not necessarily talking only about product, can be a solution, a system approach, will be competing on the same level with other people, and maybe they are not today. So definitely procurement should be there. Do you want to intervene now, or do you want me to continue on?
Yes, it seems a very easy solution, yet it's not happening. And I think the frustration, some of the speakers in the session number 1, where we were discussing about asset management, doing more with less. So it was a session, Magali, where we presented some of the innovation that exists already, but they found it extremely difficult to scale it up. We have somehow the feeling, and I'm fully putting my IRF hat right now. We feel that a lot of the solutions are already there, actually. And throughout the conference, we have been, watching and hearing about the technology advancement, the wonders that digitalization is making, but it's still not happening. So what is it? I mean, it's a no-brainer. We know that as soon as you manage to change procurement, things can change, because if it functions as an incentive, I wouldn't call it a constraint, but more as an incentive. You are able to provide me a better solution, I will give you more points. And that's how we push that positive spillover mechanism. But it doesn't happen. Is it because it's not fully understood in your perspective? Is it because we don't have skills?
There's 2 things. If you take the case of Holcim, we started, we launched a global brand called EcoPact, which is concrete with 30% less CO2. 3 years later, it's more than 20% of the sales, which is incredible. Think of when the last time someone launched a brand that became 20% of the sales in 3 years. Fantastic. With a price premium, not big, but so it's not because here you are not changing the way you do procurement. You're still buying concrete. You're still buying a commodity. My ex-boss would hate me for saying that, but at the end, most people consider concrete as a commodity. I think the name of the game is to go from commodity sales to system sales. And system sales is way more complex. It requires a complete different relationship between the buyer and the person supplying. Commodity is easy. I want to buy concrete or whatever, asphalt, you name it, doesn't matter. I just launch a tender, people all provide the same thing and they give the price and that's it. When I start selling systems, I'm selling, putting things together. And those are things that have hardly ever been done, I think. So I think that change of mindset, which has to impact both the one selling and the one buying, is really getting out of the business as usual compared to just changing the way you buy concrete. So exactly. I don't know if that's the reason, but that's why I think legislation and changing that part of public procurement could really help moving, because once that happens, companies will have to adapt and they will do it.
Absolutely. I think many of them are ready and willing to do that. It pushes the sector to a higher standard, but still difficult. We know that change comes with a lot of resistance. You should know yourself. Maybe not, because within Holcim you have been able to deliver wonders in very fast when it comes to sustainability. But change is a fact, comes with a lot of resistance. And from my experience, I apologize to the procurement people here, but procurement people have the habit of doing things in the same way for 20 years, 25 years. So it's very difficult to move that. Now, if I hear you correctly, you're saying, okay, but if it comes from the top, if it comes with policy and regulation, then, that should follow.
Just faster. It's just accelerating. Maybe it's not the best way to happen, but it's just faster. So if we continue, and maybe that could be the lead way to the something that didn't get too much votes either, which is all the workforce part and the upskilling force part. And I think just the example we took on procurement, it does require people who think differently. And I think we should not underestimate the work that is required there, and how much changing the processes is also innovation. Innovation is not just technology, it's also changing the processes. It's also having people who use digital more. I mean, I saw part of the list of people that my good friend Nicola Miravals is here. I just want to mention Oris. Oris is really looking at a complete different way of of designing roads, not just designing roads, but looking at where the material is, and to think that originally it was coming from a company like Holcim who decided to put the database of every single material, either those resources were Holcim or competitors or everyone else. It really requires a different way of thinking, and that doesn't happen with having people thinking the same way. So I think we need a new way of thinking, and it's changing fast. So we don't have time anymore. Things, if you look at the world 5 years ago compared to the world today on the sustainability side, it's day and night. I mean, you can't, nothing that was true 5 years ago is true anymore today. Seriously, that's how fast it has been. And having a workforce that can be adapted to those changes, to the digital changes, to look at ORIS, I mean, it just requires a different way of thinking. And I will link that to gender diversity. Mm-hmm. Because one thing about gender, which also didn't get too many votes, is when you bring women to the table, or not just gender, in fact, diversity in general, we tend too much to have the same people coming from the same university, the same background, the same social background, working together, and we wonder why we are not more innovative. When you need to bring people with completely different way of thinking, and something I remember discussing with you one day, how a lot of the infrastructures, the buses, the common transport, and the sidewalk, so the walking, is used much more by women than men. And I'm not sure those professional men who maybe are not that involved in the raising of their kids have reflex on some of the challenges that women go through when they're doing all of that using the infrastructure. And I think, so I would link all of that, the upskilling, the gender diversity, but also the changing of processes. For me, it all goes together. And I agree with you, it's a bit disappointing that it didn't come out more on that question. But I'm giving the credit that maybe it was a prioritization thing more than anything else.
Yeah, I need to check what we did, because this Paul, we did quickly, because as soon as the speaker were talking, we were noting down what were the key issues that were being added to the tables. Of course, technology was the giant, of course, then digitalization, and a lot of reference to policy and advocacy, policy and regulation. And yes, it's as you say, it's also why these conversations are so important, and why we organize these type of events, and we do that freely online, with the stress and the difficulties that holding an event online generates to the staff. But we had an attendance from literally all over the world today. And I think there was one of the questions, I don't know if in the chat it was a comment or in the question, and the person, I think, was from Africa. I was saying, oh, but this is really wonderful. Why don't we talk more about all this? And I think when it comes to gender, to the intricacies of and the interconnections between gender issues, the way we plan and design infrastructure, the upskilling, the workforce, they're all interconnected. And that's why we are happy to bring them to the floor, to open up our minds a little bit. We're not challenged enough the audience in bringing somebody completely from a different sector, but it has been wonderful to have you as well on stage, because you come with a massive background in that respect. We are super late. I see the seal. I thank you for the audience who's still sticking with us. I just have one final question, and we'll wrap it up, and I'll give to the audience a quick overview of what expects us tomorrow. You were saying workforce, innovation, and etc. Yet, when I look at our sectors, I include maybe not the cement, but the infrastructure sector. Not only it's heavy presence of male, but also a certain generation. And in fact, colleagues, for example, in the United States, with whom we were exchanging, were telling us that they are facing a difficult situation because they have not succeeded in preparing somehow the new generation. Do you think, and what would be your advice? I know that you work a lot with startups and young people. Is it about bringing those generations more into the picture and the work and the sector that we do that will help us accelerate?
No, I mean, we've seen the difference in Holcim when we started communicating differently and taking different commitment in sustainability. Our attractiveness to the young people really changed drastically in a very short time. So it's about making the sector sexy. And I mean sexy for young people. Now, really, I don't understand why it's not. If you think about it, if you think about the amount of CO2 that's emitted by the sector and how the work that's happening on different type of mobility, EVs, you name it, and the type of solution that exists, it shouldn't be that difficult to position that in such a way that you attract the young people, because the young people want to be part of the solution. What they want is people going to see them and say, hey, I have some idea, but I need you to work with me on it. They want, you know, what young people told me, they want to see vulnerability. Think about it. How our generation struggled to show vulnerability. What vulnerability means is someone who says, I want to work on that. I'm determined to work on the decarbonization, on slow mobility, different mobility, you name it. But I'm not sure I'm the best person to do it. I need your help to come and do it with me. And those young people who are not as addicted to the car that we are, who are not as addicted to all kind of things as we are, they should jump on it. So I think it's a question of finding the right tone for them, because really the number of incredible topics that you have in the infrastructure world that should talk to them is huge. So maybe it's just a tone that has not yet been formed, but I trust you guys will do it, will find it.
I agree with you, and is in fact something we are really working on as a federation, but also with other sister organizations to try and change the way we talk about roads. No, I think we all tend to take roads for granted without really understanding what the role that roads serve also in achieving SDGs. If you don't have roads, you cannot take public transport. There's no walking, there's no cycling. If you're taking the train, at some point you will still need to step on a road. And so it seems obvious, but it's not. And we are trying to change the narrative around roads and also trying to make understand the role the roads play in really delivering on the SDGs, no? And bringing those stories and those examples. I have to wrap up here, and I would love to continue this conversation. Magali, probably we'll do a separate one as we did for the executive talk. I want to thank you so much for joining us today.